Hi, Harry.
Hey, Brennan. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're basically a year old now as a company.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, we survived.
Hey.
And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the 9 lessons that we've learned over our first 12 months as startup founders. We're going to go through each lesson individually and just, go through them and see how we feel about each one of them.
We'll start with the first one, which is personal branding.
There are 3 main factors to consider in the process of creating your brand. Connection with your niche, a shared worldview with your audience, and that you be trusted as a source of information.
Now, personal branding for us is probably the biggest lesson we've learned throughout the whole year. It's just those moments like, if our brand was a bit stronger, we might have got more attention or, more clients potentially. We've realised that our biggest mistake was probably not working on our personal brands a year and a half before we left our previous agency. And we've kind of come into 1225 a bit cold, if you would, in terms of our personal brands and the attention that we can gain from what we've done in the past.
Yeah, I think we quickly learned that there is a massive trust problem in what we do, right? Either people haven't heard of us and think it's a bit of a dark art, or people have heard of SEO, they've had an SEO agency before, and more often than not, they've been burnt.
Yeah.
If we'd have had that personal brand and going through what that quote said around essentially developing trust with an audience, we would have gone over that first barrier to sale. And I do think, like you said, it would have just accelerated our growth from maybe where we are now 2-3x had we have grown that personal brand. So yeah, I agree. I think we created these lists separately and then combined them into a list of 9. Number 1 on both our lists was growing personal brand.
So, point 2, competition.
Focus on your own lane, go at your own pace, and don't look sideways. Someone else's success does not have to impact you or detract from what you achieve.
So, Mr. Evans needs to really listen to this quote, but in general, it's that kind of the paradox of comparison and kind of comparing you to others and their journeys. Our journey is completely different, and I think at times we've probably both been guilty. Our previous place, how are we doing compared to our previous place? But it's also against other agencies, other big agencies. They've smashed through milestones like in record time. And you've always said to me at the early days, see this is what I want 1225 to be. And we've both recognised over the past year we need to go at our own pace.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's 2 different things. Like, it's been my biggest learning for sure. I think we've had a few people on the podcast, like we've had Camilla on, we've had Joe Gilbert on as well, and both of them have said in different ways that that's been one of their biggest learnings. And obviously there's the common phrase about comparison being the thief of joy. But I wrote something down just because I think this is what I've been trying to get out of it and haven't done it particularly well, which is it's inspiration, not comparison. And when I am picking out whatever company it may be and the rate of pace that they've grown or a deal that they've done that's been particularly large or they've won a marquee client, for me, that I'm trying to use that as a source of inspiration. Now, I might take my source of information from that negative feeling of comparison, but I think it's only recently, probably actually only reading that quote around inspiration, not comparison, that has really helped me understand what I'm trying to do when I'm doing that. But I think there's a time and place. Like we spoke to Camilla about the fact that I can take a great day and turn that into a bad day with one scroll of Twitter. So, yeah, it makes sense for it to be number 2 on the list because it's still something that I'm struggling to deal with now.
Harry, the power of focus. A focused fool can accomplish more than a distracted genius.
So we've spoken about this a lot. I think there's actually even a blog post on our website around the power of focus. And I think this was a learning that we learned very quickly, but based on one of the founding principles, right? So when we sat down to decide what we wanted to do, I don't know if you remember, we went to where our office is now and hired out a meeting room. And we gave a presentation to our partners about what it was going to take in those first couple of years. Yeah. And obviously, more so for you than me, just given life circumstances, like you have a young family at home, you needed to make sure that you were present at home. And one of the big things that we were believers in is, well, if we focus in those times when we are working, we'll get through more than just working all the time, but with various distractions. So there's the day-to-day power of focus, But I think there's then also the more holistic power of focus, right? So Alex Hormozy talks about the woman in a red dress, and I think that's the thing that we've probably had to deal with more. Those day-to-day focuses, hopefully you'd agree, we're actually pretty good at not looking at, not being distracted by. But business opportunity X, business opportunity Y, or we could try this new thing, that I don't think we've been particularly good at. Maybe in the first 6 months, but I do think we probably got better over the final 6.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Day to day, I think take yesterday, for instance, we both got into the office. We hardly said a word to each other. It was kind of heads down, get our work done so we could do the podcast today. And then the one good thing about us is we're coming up with ideas constantly to expand the business. What do we need to work on and focus on that? And we do this process where we'll come up with 30, 40, 50 ideas and drill it down to the ones that matter. And yeah, we've still got to figure out, I suppose, in terms of kind of what are the opportunities that drive the biggest impact, what's going to push the business forward. So, but I think if we're focused on trying to find that, we'll go far. So yeah, power of focus has been a big lesson, and throughout the year we've often stopped ourselves and just said, are we focused? Are we doing the right thing at the right time? And as long as we keep doing that, we'll succeed.
Yeah, just one practical thing that I want to touch on, just because I think it's worthwhile, is it's amazing how much of a difference just a whiteboard can make.
Yeah.
Like, we had found ourselves being distracted quite a lot. So what we did is we held a strategy day in the office, but all we took all of like electronic equipment out of the room and just used a whiteboard and a pen. And so we started off with those 30, 40 ideas, and then we crossed 10 off, then we crossed 10 off, then we crossed 10 off, to the point I think we had 8 left. And then we went through all of them being like, realistically, which ones can we do soon? Which ones can we do well? And then by the time we were done, we had 4 left. It's a lot easier to focus on 4 things than 40 things. So yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons actually is buy a whiteboard.
Yeah, exactly. So this next lesson is probably my biggest learning curve over the past year. We're doing it right now in terms of being in front of a camera, and that's being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
You can boil most success to it. Enduring short-term discomfort for long-term success.
Yeah, I believe this quote's from Alex Hormozy again. Yeah, my spirit animal. But basically, if you want to succeed, if you want to push, we've taken the biggest risk there is, starting our own business, leaving well-paid, successful jobs to start our own thing. You know, with all the uncertainty that comes with it. You're immediately becoming uncomfortable with that situation, and you've got to get comfortable with that fact fast, and that helps you, motivates you to go forward. And I think every step of the way, new things that we've had to do, you had to pay an employee for the first time. You know, all of that, in my mind, is being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think in things like this, right? Like, it still makes you incredibly nervous when we do these.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes just like, Harry, can you read this quote out? But I think it is continually pushing the comfort zone and making that your day-to-day just allows you to capture opportunities so much quicker as well. Like, I'm sure if we look at the last 12 months, there would have been contracts that we probably shouldn't have taken because we weren't ready for them. But we've taken them and we found ways to make it happen. And without that, we'd have been like probably in half the position we're in now. And to take something again that Camilla said on her podcast, where she was like, I don't consider myself successful yet. Like, I don't think we've had a massively successful first year. I know that obviously opinions differ on that, but if we hadn't been comfortable being uncomfortable, we probably still would be at the gate, not even opened the door yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, just to say, sometimes the way you look at me makes me uncomfortable.
Seriously?
No.
Oh.
Let's go with...
Well, actually, to be fair, that is a great point. And George, keep this in the podcast, because every time I record, every time I look at a camera, right, I have Harry in my eye line and his face. He doesn't know. I've pulled him up on this a number of times, and every time he thinks he's got a neutral look on his face, but it's not. It's a look of like stern, like, what the are you talking about? And that's what I've got to deal with.
Well,
so
that
knocks my
if we're
confidence.
keeping things in the podcast, we should also say this is the second time we recorded the learnings, because Brendan opened his second question the first time around with "I've learned nothing." Should we move on?
The camera makes me stop thinking. Okay, so our next lesson is probably more directed to me again. That's validation. And friend of 1225, Ray, gave us the quote for this, and that's validation shouldn't be a metric of success.
Can you just say that one again? Because like you always forgot the company name. It was like 1225.
Don't keep that in. That's not branded. Okay. So the next lesson, again, pointed probably slightly towards me. Well, you say that about me anyway. And it's on the topic of validation and seeking approval. Friend of 1225, Ray, been on our podcast recently as well, gave us a great quote for this. And that quote is, validation shouldn't be a metric of success.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because we had a conversation, a family conversation. My mum and stepdad were there as well in the kitchen talking about this, which is, I think there's a few different ways that you can think about validation, what it means. And I think we summed it up quite nicely in that conversation, which was, I think both of us, but definitely noted that I think maybe the way that you output it was more noticeable, which is like we were building self-confidence through that validation. And that validation, that it didn't really matter where it came from. It could be like a like on LinkedIn. It could be getting an approval for a grant from the BIPC. Like, it could have been anything. But we were definitely, in the short term, because you're taking such a big risk at the start, you're looking for someone to tell you that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were looking for validation in so many different areas that we were essentially trying to, we were making business decisions based on what we thought was going to get validation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that little arm around the shoulder, like as you're taking the plunge, like, what the hell am I doing? I think that's my feeling the whole way through. The first 6 months, I think I've cooled it on the validation part, because you get to a point where you realise, okay, this is my life now. I'm not able to turn back, so I might as well just keep going. And also, I've realised I don't need other people to give me that approval. It's about me and what I do.
Yeah, I'd say there's two things on that, actually. One is that I've definitely noticed your attitude change. It's gone from like one end of the spectrum to the other recently. They've been messaging me like, fuck, we're doing it this way instead. Like, you definitely moved on from the seeking validation side of things, which is, I think that in itself is growth and impressive. And then I can't remember what the second point was, so let's move on.
Okay, fair. Expectations and setting standards.
Do not expect mediocre people to support world-class goals.
I'll let you explain this as well, because you have always driven high standards, which is a good thing. I don't think we'd be in the position without you kind of driving those standards. So, yeah, what does it mean to you?
I think it's interesting. So I heard this quote, and it was probably actually a crumb of comfort. Like, I understand that I can be quite intense, right? Like, I have OCD, right? And like the O literally stands for obsession. So I understand that I can become quite obsessed with things, and I would like to think I'm okay at understanding that not everyone is going to work like to the same intensity levels for as long a period of time as I do. And I'd like to think like when we worked together that like I was quite good at not trying to put that out onto you and the wider team. But what I probably did do was make too many allowances the other way based on that. And I think this quote is really interesting because it's more about like the time when you are at work, right? When you are switched on, if you've got mediocre people there, you're going to make half the amount of progress you'd make if you had high quality. Like we spoke a lot about 10Xs in the early days. Like how many people like Matt, who we've employed, just allows us to go harder, quicker, faster, whilst still delivering high quality results. So yeah, I think that quote actually to me is more comforting, that we can have high standards and still have a great place to work. And if you can match that culture with the people, everything just falls into place.
Absolutely. Well said. I think it's manifesting itself in fun ways recently as well. It's kind of like someone will be in the office early, and the other two people, if they get in like, oh, you're in the office early. I thought I was coming into the office early. It's just little things like that. It's almost becoming a bit of a competition as well with things like sales and signing clients and stuff. Like, I want to be seen to be contributing the most to the success of the business. And I think competition is
healthy
a good way.
competition.
Yeah, healthy competition. I think it was, in the book, how how to influence people, how to make friends and influence people, Carnegie, he mentioned, I think it was Charles Schwab, went into a factory, noticed that people were kind of standing around not doing work, like smoking and stuff. He just went over to a blackboard, wrote a big number 6 on the board, and then the next shift would come in, night shift, and I'd see a number 6 on the board. What? They made six cars during that shift. Right, we're going to make 7. And suddenly that motivated everyone to work, and that kept going. So competition is a good thing, and I think actually I wouldn't have it any other way. We need to be the best we can be, so having high standards is the perfect tool to do that.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely seeing that now. We're starting to like broaden the people that we're working with. Obviously, we have like George behind the scenes. We've got Matt.
Hi, George.
we got like, is that what's that thing about like you're like the total of the 5 people that you're closest with or spend the most time with, and I think you're starting to see that in the sense of like even like things like my workouts have increased in intensity because like you and Matt are hitting the gym, for example, and all those kind of things. And we're sharing different workout plans through to we're sharing different SEO ideas through to we're starting to push on like social to see who can get the highest social count, or whatever. Like you're constantly pushing for more when you're surrounded by people who are also pushing for more. Yeah,
absolutely. Great point. This next one, I don't like the look of it, so I'll let you explain this one again because I think this one's targeted at me. But spreadsheet management.
It's actually not.
Oh, good. Okay, I thought it was about admin.
No, it's not, but we can go on to that.
No,
this one was that, like, if you can't run a business off a spreadsheet.
Perfect, yeah.
And
got it.
It's so funny. I used to get... Anybody who worked for me for like the last 5 years know how angry I used to get at people like saying no to to things based on what the spreadsheet said. Like, I used to make me so angry. But at the start of the year, at the start of our financial year, so July last year, we created a spreadsheet of what we thought was going to happen over the first year. Like what the revenue was going to be, what the costs were going to be, how many people were going to come into the business. And to start off with, we were outperforming that spreadsheet and life felt great. And then we slowly started to fall behind, made up numbers that we had no grounds to be putting in that spreadsheet. They just looked nice, right? And then my mood was drastically impacted for about 3 months because of the spreadsheet. And then we'd hold off on making investments because of the spreadsheet. We'd hold off on doing things that we knew were right because of this spreadsheet. So one thing that, piece of advice I'd give to any startup founder is that you can't build a business based on what a spreadsheet says.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in the first year. I mean, like you said, it's plucking numbers out of thin air. You don't know what it's going to be like. You can guess and do that. I think actually, apart from kind of potentially sales and the number of staff, a lot of the things we put into the spreadsheet have turned out to be quite true. So, yeah, good point there. Next point, which one do you want to go with?
I think you finished on a sales point there, so I think let's go with this one. Which I think probably should have been higher up the list, actually. I probably would have put this, if I had the time again to do this, probably 1 or 2.
Okay.
Probably 2 just behind personal brand, which is understanding the type of sales that we're in. So I first heard this concept on a podcast maybe 9 months ago, and I wish I'd heard it before we started 1225, which is that there are like different types of sales. So we're in the agency space. You're very much in like the marketing and sales popularity game when it comes to making sales, and a lot of those sales take place through networking versus say like an e-com site where that is a pure marketing play to drive sales, right? And like there is no person-to-person interaction there. It's all online. It can be faceless, and you have all these different types of sales. And I think what you need to do before you even go into your business is you need to look at what type of sales you are good at and then build a business around that. Whereas what we have done is we found the thing that we were very good at. We're very good at helping businesses grow via organic search, right? Via social, via SEO. But we're both, at the moment, not the best networkers.
Yeah, agreed.
We're not the best at growing our personal brands, although we're working on that and working with some really great people to help us do that. And we're not necessarily the best at those like initial person-to-person interactions. So we have a business that we're really good at delivering the thing, but not necessarily great at selling the thing yet. And that's been a big learning curve for us. So I think what I would do is if you think of a business idea, find out what type of sales that is, and then practice that type of sales to see if you're good at it first.
Yeah.
So you don't have that massive learning curve with the pressure of knowing that your business survival depends on it first.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And also, I think there's a secondary kind of tip or hint there as well, in terms of also give yourself some slack in terms of you might not actually know how good you are. I would say to you, I would say to everyone, I'm the world's worst salesman. I can't network and stuff. But you, like, again, I've gone to 2 networking events and I've signed 2 clients. The personal brand side of things, posting on LinkedIn. I never posted on LinkedIn before I started the business. We secured 2 clients from LinkedIn posting. So, yeah, when you actually evaluate the success rate of what we've been doing and the number of leads we spoke to, yeah, actually, I'm pretty effective. I won't say highly. I'll say pretty effective. And I think actually when you evaluate it that front, you can give yourself a bit more slack and realise, okay, I'm a bit better. Yeah, I know I need to improve. But I think that knowledge and that kind of working through it and understanding the type of sales we're in, we've now kind of gone away and split up the roles slightly. Do you want to explain that?
No, go for it.
So in the past, we've kind of both just tried to get leads, source leads, talk to them, then get them into pitch stage and then close them, sign them. But actually what we found is you're much better at sourcing the leads and starting the conversation. And I'm probably much better at kind of showing them the process, building that trust, and then closing the deal as well. So actually we can work together in tandem, but own each part of the sales cycle. And that way we're using our best elements from both sides.
Yeah, you got that closing riz, as the kids would say.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah.
I
don't know what riz means, but yeah.
All right, let's finish our final lesson. Lesson number, I think this is lesson number 8 or lesson number 9 in the list, which is building capabilities. Talk to me about that.
Well, you can look at it a number of different ways. I suppose it comes into focus for us because this is the one that we probably, to begin with, it's the one area we kind of focused on. We had grand plans of, getting every 2-3 months we'd be employing someone. We'd start from the top and work our way down. Would start with sales, get a salesperson in, and all of that, those elements. We've made mistakes there. I think that's suffice to say. I think you're never going to get things 100% in your first year. That's definitely an area that we've almost, I'll say, almost naive in terms of what we've done and how we've gone about it. Whereas actually we should have probably focused on other levers of the business, other pillars like the sales, like the clients, and get that better. And now building capabilities, we're now starting to align more with experts, getting people into the business that we can work with. George being the example with the video, giving us that true video capability. We're working with Ray on social media bits and pieces. We've got Matt in the business who's excellent. So we're starting to get people that are more talented than us in their respective areas to help push us forward. And that's what building capabilities is to me.
Yeah, and I think it's also just accelerating things.
Yeah.
Like, we held on to some of the things that we probably shouldn't have held on to for the sake of like 200 quid, right? Like, we wasted days trying to get payroll right for the first 3 months when we made the first hire, free to like trying to sort the first VAT bill ourselves. 200 quid a month, and that was all sorted. And it allowed us to park that as an area of focus and move on to, like you say, putting more energy into the things that we knew were going to drive the business forward. Claire Dalton said it on the podcast we recorded with her, which was a philosophy that she's taken into building her second business versus the first, was hiring experts to do the things that they're good at rather than trying to be a jack of all trades and master of none. And yeah, I think we have started to do that now, and we're seeing the upsides of that very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. So those are our 9 lessons. And then just looking back to where building started as well. At the very start of the journey, handing in the notice, that was our very first episode.
Yeah.
Season 2's become away from our kind of growth journey and focused on other businesses, which I think is super interesting for us. It's a great way. It's almost like we've suddenly got a mentor, but the mentor is tens, hundreds of different business owners, and we're getting little bits of information from each of them. So I think that is a superb kind of way for us to grow as a business and understand and grow our knowledge. But the one thing I wanted to finish on was we asked each other a question: how would you rate the first year in terms of kind of a score out of 10? 1 being kind of very poor, 10 being excellent. And this probably goes to show the people that have been listening to the original run of podcasts,
let's
the differences
open up. What do you reckon our numbers were?
How do you reckon we rated the first year of 1225?
On a scale of 1 to 10, we both had different numbers.
So I'd say Brendan would go for an 8 and Harry would give a 6.
Oh, that's close.
You were close.
So I said 7 and Harry said, you said 5,
I said 5,
didn't you?
Yeah.
And we both then said what we think the other person would say. And I said you would say a 4,
Yeah.
and you said I would say an 8.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting that you can see that. So, and I think your scoring comes from that innate kind of ambition to be probably further ahead or faster along the journey, if you will. Whereas I'm just happy that I'm working for myself, you know. I'm not homeless. I'm looking after my family still, and that's good for me.
Yeah, I think something that, I think regardless of where we were, like just personality type, it probably would have still given it a 5.
Yeah, fair.
I think in retrospect, something that I need to work on. But yeah, I mean, nature of the podcast, what we're doing, we're building. I'm very excited for year 2 of 1225. We've got a couple of other exciting projects on the horizon as well. And we've got so many exciting guests to be speaking to over the next couple of months as well. So excited to get into year 2.
Yeah, watch this space.
Yeah, you got a school run to do too now.
Yeah, exactly.
Should run off. Sweet.
Nice.
All right, nice one. We're done.
Cheers.